20 hours pouring the roof.
Above and beyond the planning and design concepts, the architectural and engineering features, and the construction work, there's one thing which stands out. Eden's theater had a distinct architectural style. This was a beautiful style, which is best explained by one who has the appropriate talent, training, and insight.
To understand why this building is important, you have to understand why it's unlike a style that was popular at that time called modernism. And it gained popularity in this country mainly after the Second World War. It was based on really the architectural theories of three architects in Europe: Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius, and Mies van der Rohe. And Mies van der Rohe emigrated to this country and took a position as the head of IIT, the Illinois Institute of Technology. And so his brand of modernism, very geometric, very plain, well, to our eyes, plain but elegant, beautiful materials, marble and so forth, very, no ornament at all, very stripped down and very elegant. His brand, that kind of modernism, really took off in this country, and Chicago especially. So you get things like the IIT campus, or the Dirksen Center, or the IBM building in the Loop. Things that we would now refer to as glass boxes. But this was very important at the time, and there were other architectural firms that quickly picked up this type of style, one of those being Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, where their main office was based in Chicago, and they had a very powerful influence in this kind of architecture. They produced buildings like the Sears Tower, the John Hancock building, real icons of modernism, corporate modernism, because this was taken up by large corporations as their sort of identity, their architectural identity. Well, in the 1950s, other architects began to stretch the boundaries of modernism. They began to create more interesting forms, but still within that very simple, elegant context. Architects like Oscar Niemeyer from Brazil, and even Le Corbusier himself, one of the fathers of modernism, began to play with the forms, make them very organic, very curved, began to play with the structure of a building, making that expressive of what the building, make that expressive of the essence of the building. So you get marvelous masterpieces that are still within this modernist realm, but very sculptural, very elegant. And that type of free-form modernism is really what the Eden's Theater is about too, in my opinion. At the same time, there was a cultural style that was big in the 1950s. Thomas Hine has described it as populux, sort of the boomerang starburst style that swept the country. You could understand it in terms of automobile design with rockets and tail fins and so forth. And that had a very forward-looking attitude to it. And it also used sinuous curves and angles, jagged angles and lines and so forth, bright colors. And that populux curve, that appeal that it had, the forward-looking design and so forth, really went with that free-form modernism that the high-style architects were going after. So the Eden's Theater is a bit of both. It's a bit of that high-style, free-form modernism, but in a context where you could say it was very popular. It's a movie theater, an entertainment palace, so to speak. So it was also part of the popular, part of the cultural experience at the same time. And that's a very interesting point about this building. You don't always get that high style in addition to cultural popularity at the same time in one building. And I think that's a very important thing to remember about the architecture here. Well, the location of the theater is also very important. Needless to say, it's in the northwest suburbs. Okay. Well, it's a suburban location. It is not an urban project. It is not urban infill. So the project doesn't have to be about the frontage, the street frontage, like the Granada Theater or the Chicago Theater, where a lot of those buildings had to do with just that one plane where it met the street, and of course the huge marquee that hung off the front of the building. Those older theaters, the pre-war theaters, were about that. What was along the street to get people to come into the building. Well, the Eden Theater is a suburban site. It had no street frontage where it had buildings to relate to on either side, so it could be a sculptural object. It could be an object in space to be viewed from any angle. And in fact, it was situated within its site so that the Eden's Expressway would be on one side, the Skokie Valley Highway would be on the other, and then the Expressway spur would be on a third side, so that it was surrounded by automobile traffic. So the building was able to capture the eye from the motorist, the eyes of the motorists from any angle. It was almost, it seems like it would be a sort of what's the word here? That it would be able to capture the eye would be, I think, very important programmatically to the building. So I think that the form, the architecture, in this case, is very tied to the selling of the building itself, the selling of the function, I should say. It was very unusual, very eye-catching. Well, there are two other, I think, important commercial projects along the Eden's Expressway, and the Eden's Theater is sort of the northernmost. The other two are Old Orchard Shopping Center, designed in 1956 by a very prominent Chicago architecture firm, Lobel, Schlossman & Bennett. And the other one is Eden's Plaza, by the firm of Graham, Anderson, Probst & White of 1956 as well. And Graham, Anderson, Probst & White were behind buildings such as the Merchandise Mart and the Wrigley Building. So really, both firms were very tied to the architectural heritage in Chicago. And both projects were wonderful examples of modernism. 1950s strict modernism, very elegant. And both projects have been desecrated with new additions and changes and redesigns and so forth. The landscaping of Old Orchard Shopping Center was by Lawrence Halprin, a very, very important landscape architect. And most recently, they've made additions and parking garage additions and so forth, and really changed the entire character of the mall into one of sort of an English garden-looking thing with white lattice work everywhere and Victorian scrolls and so forth, which is not at all the identity that the mall had originally. It has lost a lot of what made the mall architecturally important to begin with. Eden's Plaza has been recently encased in a postmodern redesign of brick and plastic columns and so forth, and it has lost its identity as well. It's wonderfully elegant Misesian modernism with white bricks and black metal columns and so forth. And the interior of Carson's, there was a wonderful a rotunda with great sweeping curves and so forth, and that has been completely removed and the rotunda filled in. So those two other monuments on the Eden's Expressway have been changed beyond recognition and really have lost much of their architectural significance. And of course the Eden's Theater, as we all know, doesn't even exist anymore. And it hasn't been changed so much as completely erased. And that's very unfortunate. We've lost a lot of the post-war architectural heritage, and we can't get that back. There's no way to restore these monuments that have been so drastically changed, let alone ones that have been demolished. The ones that have been changed are equally as irretrievable.
Eden's One has left fond memories with many theatergoers. We have time to get the viewpoints of a few of them, such as Charlie Beinlich at his restaurant across the street.
When they had it, when they first opened, they would park down the road, up the road, fill our parking lot. It was just unbelievable.
We were delighted to find a theater of that quality in our new hometown, particularly because my husband and I had always been great movie fans. Going to the Eden's Theater was like going to a large movie palace, like the Oriental Theater in Chicago or the Chicago Theater, which is now used for shows but was once a movie theater. You felt like you were having a real experience.
The Edens, as I recall, did not have the panoramic screen. It didn't have Dolby sound or Sensurround. Those were non-existent when it was built. I don't know that it was upgraded necessarily. It may have been at one time, but the feeling that I got in that theater was that I was actually not in the movie as a participant, but I was in the movie.
It was a great venue for the showing of such big screen extravaganzas as Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the Star Wars trilogy, and E.T. And I can remember very well going there to see Gone with the Wind when it was re-released after many, many years, and taking a young daughter for her first experience with that blockbuster show. When you saw Gone with the Wind at the Edens Theater, you experienced the sound, you experienced the great big picture all over the screen in front of you. You had an experience with the great crowd of people there who were appreciating a really good movie in a good location.
I remember seeing Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and it came to life. Be that it was not necessarily that historically accurate, didn't matter, because Westerns were long gone by that time, and we were getting into the age of the science fiction films, and I did see 2001: A Space Odyssey there, and there was no finer venue for that. That was absolutely the finest theater for that movie that I can think of.
Yeah, the Loveliners were very nice fellows. They explained to us about the building, and they said that if the movie didn't go, they were going to have live entertainment in there, and they had a stage in there that would take care of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. It was that large, but it never matured. They never went for live entertainment. I don't know why, because I think it would have been successful out here.
Another aspect of the theater that was very nice was the spacious lobby and the fact that they did have art shows in the lobby, and while you were waiting for a show to begin, you could go there and comment and enjoy the art that they were displaying at that time.
I wonder sometimes how many hours I spent at the Edens. I hope that it was enough, but I'm not really sure.
Movie-going has changed now, just like so many things in our society. I don't think we're going to have big movie palaces, big show houses for movies like the Edens Theater. It was really the modern equivalent of the old-style palaces, and now we're talking about smaller and smaller movie theaters. Great clusters of them, but not anything with the 1,300 and some seats that you had at the Edens Theater. Not any of them with the classy decor that you had at that theater, and probably not with the big full sound system that you had at Edens 1. We miss it now, and we'll probably never see anything quite like it again.
Yes, the Edens is gone. In its place, another shopping center. The questions remain. What brought on the demise? Why was such a fine theater demolished?